Morning, everybody. Eric Chaconis here for the PT on Ice Daily Show. I am part of our extremity management team. Extremity management is our orthopedic musculoskeletal management course for the extremity joints. So we've got a cervical course, we've got a lumbar course, and then we've got the extremity course. Extremity covers shoulder, elbow, wrist, and hand, hip, knee, foot, ankle. 2 days, tons of lab. It's very much focused on exercise progressions and manual therapy techniques for the most common conditions that you're see in a typical outpatient orthopedic practice, clinical practice as a rehab professional. So we've got a lot of dates coming up. We're all over the country kind of this summer. So May 20th and 21st in Hendersonville, Tennessee at the Onward Clinic there. June 24th and 25th in Grass City, California at Body Logic PT. That same weekend, we're in Rome, Georgia at Advanced Rehab. And then we've got a bunch of them in July. Simi Valley, California, west coast of Florida, Madison, Wisconsin, kind of all over the place this summer. So check out the website, ptonice.com. And anytime you want to catch an extremity course, we're probably somewhere in your neck of the woods this summer. So today's topic I want to get into is this topic related to shoulder surgery, subacromial decompression surgery for subacromial pain syndrome. And new study was just published. It's really interesting, kind of looking at the specific conservative interventions that were used prior to surgery. And so this comes from our Bellin College Doctor of Science program. For that program, that's the program that I work in. We have our students do a systematic scoping review and a research project prior to graduation. So these systematic and scoping reviews are really fun because we get to dive into a variety of topics. A number of them have won an awards. And one of the things that we're pretty passionate about is uncovering this sort of issue that we see across the published literature when it comes to different surgical procedures and then comparing that to rehab outcomes. The authors for this one were Joe Signorino, Glenn Thompson, Ben Hando, and Jody Young. Ben Hando and Jody Young are our two faculty. Ben Hando is an adjunct faculty member that helped out on this committee, chaired this committee, and then Jody Young is our research director. This is free, open access. It was published in IJSPT recently, and it'll be in Hump Day Hustling. So if you get Hump Day Hustling, our weekly newsletter, it comes out every Wednesday via email. If you're interested and you're not already signed up for that, go to the website, ptonice.com, scroll down, you'll see a link for Hump Day Hustling. You can sign up for that. But what we do is really send you current best evidence and all the research that's coming out, all the new research that's coming out on a weekly basis that we think is going to be the most helpful for you in your practice. And so for this one, the background here is that usually across the board in the literature, subacromial pain, there isn't good evidence to suggest that you should get a subacromial decompression procedure done. So when we compare rehab outcomes to surgical outcomes, there really is no difference across the board. So subacromial pain syndrome, you really should get rehab, not surgery. Multiple linked systematic reviews, clinical practice guidelines all recommend the same thing. Avoid surgery, have rehab for subacromial pain syndrome. The outcomes are equivalent when we look at pain and function long term. So the only justification that you can really make when you're talking about should I get surgery for subacromial decompression is if you fail conservative interventions. That's the justification that they'll make. So they'll say, well, they already tried rehab. They went through a course of rehab for 8 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever it is. It didn't work. So now we're going to, now the subacromial decompression surgery is indicated. And that is the problem with that is, what did the rehab look like? What specifically was done as far as the physical therapy goes that didn't work? And so that's what these authors set out to do. They set out to really analyze the scientific literature and figure out what specifically was done in all of these cases, what specifically was done for rehab preoperatively that justified a subacromial decompression because they failed it. And so you've got other stuff. I mean, there's other stuff besides rehab. There's corticosteroid injections. There's non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. There's a lot. But rehab really is the hallmark. That is the one consistent thing that has been shown time and time again to be very helpful for these individuals. So a progressive loading exercise program that's appropriately dosed We know that when you combine exercise and manual therapy together, that is more effective. That gives us better outcomes when people have subacromial pain. And so that's what they tried to do. They screened about 1,400 studies. And after it teased out, we look at inclusion criteria, really just looking at randomized controlled trials that looked at surgical decompression as an intervention. They are left with about 47 studies. So they just looked at that window of 2000 to 2022 in this scoping review. And what they found is not surprising, but at the same time, super disappointing, right? Like 30% of the studies didn't even identify if a physical therapist delivered the care. So we don't know who delivered the care. So that question, you question the quality in that case. 51% provide no detail as to what was actually done by the physical therapist, if the physical therapist saw them. Only 17% included manual therapy, even though manual therapy is a critical component to the clinical practice guideline for subacromial pain. Over half the studies did not include any description of an exercise program, even though exercise is the critical hallmark to rehab for subacromial pain syndrome. And less than a quarter of them included some type of home exercise program. So a very small percentage had a home exercise program. None of them measured adherence to either the home program or just coming to therapy in general. So they've got these programs described, but there's really no detail whatsoever, and you have to question the quality. So I think, obviously, if you're trying to justify surgery for a condition, you don't really care what the rehab looked like, right? You're very happy with it just being whatever because you're trying to justify the need for surgery. And so that's, I think it's up to us. And we see that in clinical practice, don't we, all the time, where people will say, I tried rehab, it didn't work, right? I mean, they're quick to say rehab failed. I think that's when you have to ask, well, what was specifically done? There's still a wide variation in what we see as far as what somebody gets when they go to see a physical therapist. You can have the exact same person, exact same condition, all the same impairments, same level of irritability, everything is the same, and you get two very different rehab programs from two different physical therapists. So we're not at a point yet where we really have a strong standard of care in our profession for what is being done for a lot of these different conditions. And I think that's really the key issue that these researchers were trying to uncover. I think that this is not unique to subacromial pain. I think that we see this across the board. Another good example would be meniscus rehab or meniscus meniscectomy. So we know for degenerative meniscus tear, you really should not get a clean out scope. That is not indicated across the scientific literature. Clean out scopes are not helpful for people with degenerative meniscus tears. Those people need to be managed conservatively. Same issue though. You have a wide variation in what is being done. And when we look at the literature on that, it'll be really interesting to do this same type of scoping review on that topic to see what does that literature look like, because across the board, it's obviously very, very low quality and or not described. Now, to be fair, I think you have to be fair. These are surgical studies. The focus is on surgery. It's not on rehab. And so there are probably some things that are being done well that are just simply not described in the publications. That's reasonable. There are word counts and limitations to how much you can describe in a study like that. And so maybe they're not trying to spend time or waste up valuable word cap on a description of the rehab program. But it would be very easy to cite it, wouldn't it? It'd be very easy to take a rehab program that is well established and evidence-based and cite that program. So I think it's still not an excuse. And hopefully moving forward, when we do see surgical studies like this, we see a better description of what's done if it's failed. Because I think there are times, you have to be fair, there are times where good quality conservative interventions do not work, and the person perhaps does benefit from surgical decompression. I had a patient the other day, actually. I'm helping a friend who has chronic shoulder pain. We're working through it and doing a lot of different exercise interventions, and really, for the most part, slowly improving. But at the end of the day, his AC joint was just so degenerated and the pain was so focal now to the acromioclavicular joint. He ended up having to get a Mumford procedure because he just had stalled and there wasn't any more progression. And when you look at the imaging, you see a very, very degenerated AC joint, and you could understand why he would elect for surgery because there's nothing we're going to do to reverse the degenerative changes that have occurred in the AC joint. And they were very advanced, severe AC joint OA. So there are times where it's indicated. But I think the issue, when we look across the board in the literature, is that for the most part, for most people, they really need high quality rehab. And so that needs to be the standard of care. The standard of practice, standard of care, that's what's in our clinical practice guidelines. And that's what needs to be followed, obviously, in real life clinical practice. That's really, really important. So hope that helps. Take care, everybody.